Alright, for today's industry insight, we're going to be talking about how competition works in the game industry. This is going to be expanding on my previous critical thought, talking about indirect versus direct competition. But we're going to also add in the state of the mobile market as well. But to recap, when it comes to any consumer product, again, be it cars, books, movies, video games, and so on, there is always competition. Direct competition is when two or more companies are putting out products that basically are one or the other, meaning that you're not going to be buying 5 different cars, or if I go eat at Burger King, I'm not going to immediately turn around and go eat at McDonald's. There is a limit to how much someone can use this product, and direct competition, of course, is very cutthroat like that, because there are only so many consumers who are looking for that select good. Indirect competition is when there are multiple products that basically aren't the same as each other, such as books. Just because I read one fantasy book doesn't mean I'm not going to read any other books. Same goes for movies. Just because I've watched Friday the 13th doesn't mean I'm never going to want to watch Nightmare on Elm Street, and so on and so forth. And when we think about traditional video games and competition along those lines, most video games, especially in the console and PC space, are indirect competition. Yes, there are only so many consumers and so much money to go around, but just because I play Persona 5 doesn't mean that I don't want to play West of Loathing, or The Binding of Isaac and Spelunky, Mario, Zelda, and you get the picture. And this is the beauty of the game industry in this sense, is that it allows video games to retain their shelf life a bit longer compared to other mediums. Again, because we're not in all kinds of beeping going outside, because most video games aren't in direct competition, it means that just because someone puts out one game, you're not having to worry about stealing another game's thunder. Now, with that said, of course, there are a few major exceptions. As we've seen, the September to November month are usually the big AAA release period. So you have to be really careful if you're an indie or AA studio if you're going to try and position yourself next to Call of Duty, Battlefield, Destiny 2, and so on. With that said, though, there are a few key differences between video games and other markets. Even though we are open to buying video games, or we're open to buying multiple games, games still have a hard or somewhat hard shelf life, meaning how long they're going to remain financially viable. Now, depending upon the popularity of the game, and even what they do post-release, games as a service for instance, this can be extended. But eventually, everyone who's going to buy this video game is going to buy it. And at that point, there's not going to be much profit unless you're going the subscription or a heavy microtransaction route. Now, this is different, of course, from products that require regular use or regular purchases. Eating is a really good example of that. Just because I buy dinner for one night doesn't mean I'm not going to eat again and again. But once I've bought, let's go with Cuphead, for instance, I'm not going to be buying it a second, third, fourth, and fifth time. Now, with that said, though, the part that I want to talk about is where my thoughts go with the mobile market, and why I still don't see it as being sustainable in the long run. And that's because mobile games operate different from a traditional console and PC game. Like we were just talking about, most PC and console games are indirect competition. The games are sufficiently different enough so that just because I buy and play one doesn't rule out buying a second one when I have money. But with the mobile game side of things and how homogenous it is, especially among the top tier games, your Clash of Clans, Clash Royale, Farmville, Candy Crush, and so on, these games are heavily built again around whales, the small minority of people who pay the big bucks. And we don't have the time to be going too far into that one. But when it comes to the mobile game side of things, these titles are built to get as much money out of someone as they can, and then it's just kind of, let that person go, we'll let someone else come in. And this is why whale retention is such a big deal when it comes to monetization strategies. However, the problem is that it's creating a market that is directly competing with each other. Because these games are so similar in either design or monetization, it means that once you've played one game and you spent 500, 1,000, or whatever amount of money on it, what's going to convince you to do that again, and so on? The beauty with the indirect side of things, again, is that I can buy a game on Steam, I can buy a game on GOG and whatever, and I'm going to get completely different experiences. The value is still there for me. Now, the other major difference between mobile games and other markets is the fact that the shelf life when it comes to the mobile side, for most developers, they want to be infinite. They don't want Candy Crush Saga to fall off the top 10 list. They don't want Clash Royale, Clash of Clans, and so on. And it enters that self-fulfilling prophecy. Once you've made onto the top 10 or top 20 list on iOS or the Play Store, you're going to be constantly marketed, which means more people are going to see you and they're going to play your game, which means they're going to keep rating it and keeping it up there. But as we've said before, the downside, of course, is that it becomes very hard for someone new or someone without a hot IP to break into that. And if you don't, then your game might as well not even exist once it falls off the front page. The same goes for sites like Steam and so on. But again, when it comes to discoverability, at least we have the fact that most games are indirect. So even if I don't see your game on the front page, if word of mouth can spread, I can still buy it because it is something different. But if your game falls off because it's just another Match 3 clone or Flappy Birds, why should I give you money and not one of the bigger names? And this, I think, is the crux of the issue when it comes to the mobile game side. The mobile market makes a lot of money. There is no denying that Candy Crush, Clash of Clans, Kim Kardashian's Hollywood, and so on have made a decent buck or two. But the problem, though, is how much of the money that is earned in terms of revenue for the mobile game side not going to the top 10 or top 20 games. That, I think, is the big issue here. Because, again, when it comes to Steam and other markets, because things are being competed indirectly, that money can spread. Yes, there are people who will go out and buy Call of Duty and Battlefield on day one. But there are as many people who will enjoy spreading their money around, buying more games, and trying to, again, support the developers they like. When it comes to the mobile side of things, again, once you are hooked on Clash Royale or Candy Crush Saga, are you going to be playing and, more importantly, paying to another game or two? And I honestly don't have the answer to that, and that's where I think things are very scary when it comes to the mobile side. So I asked this question before, but I'm going to pose it again. To any developers watching this who are making mobile games right now, how are you finding the market if you're not in the top 10 or even top 20 on iOS? And how are you compensating for that? Because again, when it comes to the mobile side of things, once your game disappears off that front page or it's no longer in the top or new releases, how are people going to find you? And again, it's not an easy question to answer. But again, when it comes to making a traditional video game, being the fact that most games aren't direct competition with each other helps to make the market more healthy, and it helps to keep things diverse. Because again, we're not going to see, or here's the other big point. When someone makes a really popular game, in the console and PC side, you're not going to see 20 other developers directly copy it. They may iterate and evolve things or elevate, but just because Call of Duty does well doesn't mean we're going to see 15 Call of Duty knockoffs. However, on the mobile side, again, the second Clash of Clans, Flappy Bird, Kingdom Crush, I just combined Clash of Kingdom, I'm combining all the games, Candy Crush Saga, when any of these games became popular, we saw 10 to 15 clones of it. As a bit of a fun thing, when I typed in like Plants vs. Zombies in on the iOS store, the Play Store, I got like 30 different zombie-related games. And of course, there are plenty of zombie games on Steam as well. But we see them just directly copy their design. They may change the graphics a little bit, but it's still the same basic gameplay. Flappy Birds being a really great example that we talked about recently on Game Wisdom Live. The 24 hours after the game was released, people were already copying and ripping it off. And again, we're not even talking about elevating the design. We're just seeing almost a shot-for-shot remake, maybe with like a slight graphical touch, or maybe they'll do like a meme thing with the bird, but that's it. But again, it raises the question, is that market sustainable? Can someone brand new today create a very amazing game and have it sell well on iOS or the Play Store? I don't know. And again, the more time goes by, I think the harder it's going to become until some major shakeup happens. But with that said, we're going to wrap up today's industry insight. So thank you so much for watching. If you have an idea for a future one, let me know in the comments below. But be sure to like and subscribe if you're new, and check back for daily discussions on game design here and on GameWisdom.com, where we examine the art and science of games. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. For my writings as well as weekly podcasts, check out game-wisdom.com. For ways of supporting Game Wisdom and get access to rewards such as VIP status, as well as voting for the Saturday Night Grab Bag, check out patreon.com/gwbycer. You can follow me on Twitter at gwbycer for my daily thoughts as well as updates as to what's going on. So thanks again for watching, and be sure to check out our next video coming real soon to the channel.